let me start again. I'm going to call the meeting, the January 5th work session of Norwood Borough Council to order. Apologize for the delays. We had some technical issues changing over from the last meeting, which went late. All right, let's begin with calling the roll.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Council President Fred Bush.
Here.
Council Vice President Michelle Panopoulos.
Here.
Council Member Barbara Fortner.
Here.
Council Member Rob McGreevy.
Here.
Council Member Cindy Rickards.
Here.
Council Member Bob Weisford.
Here.
Council Member Ira Winston.
Here.
Mayor Andrea Deutsch.
Here.
All right. Thanks, everyone. I have a few comments. First, it was pointed out that I did not go over committee assignments at our reorganization meeting, as is typical. So the committees of Borough Council, we have the Ad Hoc Parking Committee with Chairperson Barbara Fortner, Vice Chairperson Bob Weisford, and Member Rob McGreevy. The Finance and Administration Committee, Chairperson Cindy Rickards, Vice Chair Barbara Fortner, Member Ira Winston. The Infrastructure Committee, Chairperson Michelle Panopoulos, Vice Chair Ira Winston, Member Rob McGreevy. And the Public Health and Safety Committee, which just met, Chair Rob McGreevy, Vice Chair Bob Weisford, and Member Cindy Rickards. And we'll also be covering
I can't hear anything.
Okay, we think everybody is logged back in, and we'll be trading around the room. We'll have to mute and unmute because of feedback issues, so bear with us. So I was saying, I believe that we are going to be operating with some enhanced COVID protocols that we'll be discussing later in the meeting. The simplest one for meetings is that we're asking people to keep their masks on at all times during a meeting, including when you're speaking. So we don't have any members of the public in the meeting today, but in the future, that's also what we'll be asking. Okay, next we have the mayor's comments. Ms. Mayor.
Thanks, Fred. As everybody knows, Omicron variant is now wildly spreading everywhere, including in the borough. It's everywhere. I'm going to really encourage everybody to wear masks. If you are in borough-owned buildings, you must wear a mask, and that mask must be worn properly over your nose and mouth at all times. In fact, I think the borough is getting some N95s to hand out at the meetings so that the better kind of mask is worn. And everybody's encouraged to step up their mask game because the cloth masks aren't quite as effective. In fact, they're not particularly effective against this variant at all. I would remind everybody that we have a lot of businesses in the borough, and the businesses have some different protocols coming in. Most require masks to enter. Some require vaccination cards. If you want to join that business and participate in shopping in those businesses, you have to follow those protocols. The business owners have they have the responsibility of keeping everybody safe in their business and doing what they think is necessary to do that. They have the right to set the rules in their own properties. If somebody refuses to wear a mask or comes in without proper identification regarding vaccination cards, that business owner has the right to contact the police and ask you to be removed from their business if you refuse to leave. So let's just do what we need to do to stay safe, keep everyone safe, respect, the wishes of people trying to help you out. And let's just get through this as best we can. Thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you, Mayor Deutsch. And I realize I did move slightly ahead in the agenda. We need to have consideration of any changes or additions to the agenda. Does anyone have any changes or additions they want to propose to tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move ahead to public comment. Ms. Bryant, if you can manage public, we have no one present in Borough Hall. Well, that's not true. I'm assuming we have no comment. Okay, from members of the public in Borough Hall. So, Ms. Bryant, if you'll.
Sure. Thank you, Council President. So first up, people looking at people with their hands raised. I'm going to call on first on Carol Marie Scanlon.
Good evening. I have a couple questions. Are these meetings being recorded now that Narberth Civic is not recording them? How can we find the recordings?
So my understanding is that and I believe Mr. Spear is here with us. My understanding is that the Civic Association is going to continue to post the meetings as they've done after the meeting is done. But I'll defer to Jim to answer that one for me, please.
Hi, am I on? Oh, there I am. Okay. Yes, that's correct. Civic Association has stopped filming with our camera, as we did for a number of years. We are still posting them to Civic Association YouTube channel, so they're being recorded locally in the room now, and that recording, upon the conclusion of the meeting, the next day or two, it's still going to get posted to the Civic Association YouTube channel. It's the same place you can find all the other archive meetings. So that will continue going forward.
Great, thanks, Jim. My next question is, did we skip the Pledge of Allegiance? Is that going to be part of the meetings?
It's a workshop meeting. They don't pledge on the workshop meeting.
Yeah, the Pledge of Allegiance is at the business meeting. It's not at the work session or at the committee meetings.
Okay. And then I have a question about 201 Sabine. At the last council meeting, Wonder Spring had made a comment about a plan. The last paragraph of their written says, Wonder Spring deeply values its role in the community and its partnership with the borough. We are eager to look to the borough to support its effort to obtain public funding to supplement the plan. We believe that by working together to implement this plan, we can help ensure Narberth remain a thriving, desirable community for families and businesses. What is the plan?
Carol Marie, nobody here can speak for Wonder Spring.
No, but I'm wondering, has a plan been presented?
We presented 5 possible plans at the meeting in December that you were at, although I think we immediately sort of eliminated one, and there are no other plans, but I can't speak for Wonder Spring.
So has Wonder Spring presented a plan to council?
So
No.
I just want to remind everyone that sorry, I'm dealing with the feedback here. I just want to remind everyone, Carol Marie, I was happy to answer your first 2 questions because they were very time sensitive and relevant to the meeting itself. Otherwise, that this is public comment as we've done in the past, as opposed to a question and answer sort of format. I do think we want to stick with that. So I'm happy to chat with you, later on. But otherwise, as Councilmember Panagopoulos said, the borough hasn't, we can't speak for Wonder Spring or anything like that in terms of what they're referencing in terms of plan in their letter. And for any other questions, you're happy to follow up with me. But this isn't, back and forth time.
That's all right. So is this meeting public comment on the record? Is that how this meeting goes also?
Sorry, what was the first set?
Are these meetings public comment on the record? Like when you make a comment, is it on the record?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that I also, so I wanted, one of my record comment, on the record comment is, has Wonder Spring given a proposal to the council for the property at 201? And have any other community proposals been received?
I mean, thanks for your comment, Carol Marie. And I think we have another public comment that speaks to that. So I think we're going to move on. But the short answer is no. So let's move on to the next comment. Thank you, Carol Marie.
All right. Next up, we have Mr. Dennis Cowan.
Good evening. I'm Dennis Cowan, 27 Norbert Park. Happy New Year and good evening, council members. In advance, if anyone walks past me, it's because I'm at one of my children's classes tonight. Anyway, my public comment is about item 7 on the agenda, the Ken Baird interview. So Mr. Baird of HRG submitted a statement of qualifications to provide municipal planning services to Norbert Borough. And under the project understanding on page 30, there is no specific project and or use case we're considering for engagement. He touches on the challenges Norbert and many municipalities face and that they can assist with each, but there's no specific project and or use case listed. HRG's qualifications and experience are impressive and not in question. Just the timing of this consideration is. So the borough has a lot on its plate. We recently invested in a professional services agreement with an e-consult for 201 Sabine, and the shared community vision has not been established. We have had KCBA provide a study as well as the 2040 plan created. And currently there are numerous other projects underway and priorities to establish for the coming year. But why are we considering another firm for an undefined scope of work? And the statement of qualifications reads like HRG is being considered for a standby role for anything we need assistance with. If that is the case, is the borough looking to establish a go-to firm to serve as a Swiss Army knife, if you will? And is HRG the first of several firms that council will be interviewing in the coming weeks or months? If so, what would this arrangement look like? Terms, costs, and commitment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Cowan, and I hope that when we speak with Mr. Baird, that we'll answer a lot of those questions. Are there more public comment? Anyone else in the Zoom wishing to comment? Okay, so we have some comments that were submitted to us via email, and I believe these were all asked to be sort of entered into the public record. So in the future, if you wish to email a public comment and have it read aloud at a meeting, please note public comment on your email, and we will endeavor to accommodate you, assuming length permitting. So let me try these. All right. Dear Narberth Borough Council President, Vice President, members, and Borough Manager, we are writing to follow up on the ongoing discussions of the property and building at 201 Sabine. We, along with the majority of the community, remain strongly in support of option 1 to use the entire property for green space, i.e. an expanded park for the recreation of all adults and children of the borough. Keeping in mind how small a property this really is, it is important to accept that it cannot be all things for all people. Simply making the small playground slightly larger, for example, wouldn't transform it from a tot lot to a full-blown park. It needs extensive greenery, a small walking or running trail, community gardens, a parking area for guests, and any other services the community deems fit. Option 1 is the only option that actually allows the space needed to make it a real community park. It is welcome news that last night council gave the borough manager the green light to begin to investigate the demolition costs of the existing building. This information will prove very helpful in future discussions. It appears that there are several items from the presentation at the previous meeting 2 weeks ago that may not be fully consistent with the discussion last night. Specifically, option 4 mentions the sale or lease of the property and should be clarified or the original document updated or removed if these are not both being considered as options at this time. There also seems to be some confusion or disagreement regarding the market rate housing option for the upper floors. We are strongly opposed to such development for the reasons stated in previous messages. There is no community support for such development, and we strongly encourage you to remove it from consideration. It is our understanding that the history of this plot of land is that it was gifted to the borough many years ago by a private homeowner with the intention of providing a recreational area for the public school students. Eventually, the school and parking lot expanded and used more of the land, but it was all originally gifted to the public for public use for a public school. Thus, the private sale or even long-term lease of such land does not seem at all in keeping with the spirit of the original donor. Now that the public school no longer exists, the public recreational space should be reclaimed by the public. Moreover, the various uses by tenants of the building over the years do not constitute a new de facto raison d'etre. The building was being leased because you had a structure which no longer had a dedicated purpose. The school was not built as a daycare center, nor a gym, food bank, medical equipment supplier, etc. There seems to be some conflation or blending of the purposes of the land and building, as well as of the role of the borough versus that of the tenants. We believe the mission of the borough is to provide basic services to the residents, including many necessities like roads and infrastructure, as well as some quality of life services for the public good, such as parks and recreation. Convenient quality childcare or a local gym for exercise are very nice features, but not part of the borough responsibilities or mandate. The tenants are private organizations, whether for-profit or not-for-profit, that rent space and provide goods or services on a paid basis. They are not an extension of the borough. Therefore, option 4, which is designed to remove the existing playground, which is in good condition and would cost taxpayer dollars to remove or relocate, add a large building and possibly add additional unwanted housing to help offset the cost of the building, mainly for the purpose of providing a new building for a private organization, is inappropriate. Public K-12 education is quite different from private childcare or early childhood education, which is beyond the scope of the borough. Public parks and recreation are also completely different in their purpose than that of a new major structure for private services or private housing. For these reasons, as well as all the previously identified logistical challenges and majority opposition to this idea, we respectfully suggest that option 4 should be removed from consideration and no further time and resources should be expended in its pursuit. There were several council members who suggested last night that options 1 and 2 are the ones that are most feasible and most in line with community goals, and that those are the ones that should be investigated. It was said in the previous meeting that the next step would be to pare down the options, and it was not practical nor helpful to investigate them all in depth. Therefore, we strongly encourage you to focus on the first 2 options. Thank you again for hearing our ongoing concerns and input. Lawrence Goldberg and Serena Chen, 200 Sabine. So I think I'm going to confine myself to 1 page, given how long that took to read at a very rapid pace. So I will read 1 page of the comments because we confine public comment to 5 minutes in general. This next public comment is from the Narberth Community Food Bank. It's dated December 29th. So, Dear President Muterick and Borough Manager Ms. Bryant, as Narberth explores options for 201 Sabine Avenue that will best serve the community, Narberth Community Food Bank and partners would like to share a vision, a plan that utilizes the entire 3.5-acre site in such a way that increased resources and services can be offered to an even larger segment of the population. In partnership with a larger agency, possibly the YWCA, Narberth Community Food Bank would remain in the building at 201 Sabine Avenue, along with organizations that provide much-needed services, including legal services, job training, as well as resources for women and children, a community meeting space, and an arts center. Affordable preschool and childcare would remain an important piece, and we would welcome WonderSpring or an alternate organization to provide those services on site with a special focus on providing financial assistance for those in need. Narberth Community Food Bank has demonstrable support from the community as well as county, state, and southeastern Pennsylvania groups. We are working with the Montgomery County American Rescue Office to pursue funding that would fully fund the entire project, including the purchase of the entire site from the borough, and making significant improvements to both the building and the possibly expanded outdoor green space. Landscape and architecture departments from area universities and local compost and conservation organizations have expressed interest in joining in this endeavor. An umbrella entity that would include Narberth Community Food Bank and its partners would be formed with the support of the Montgomery County Rescue Office. This entity would be fully responsible for the property at 201 Sabine Avenue. The project plan is modeled after other successful programs, taking into account the specific needs of our area. We very much enjoy being a part of the Narberth community and would like to pursue 201 Sabine Avenue location as the top choice for the project when funding is officially secured. Please allow this letter to serve as a statement of our interest in acquiring the campus at 201 Sabine and our commitment to serving the community for years to come. We welcome an opportunity to discuss this further. More detailed materials will be available when we solidify our partnerships and county funding. Please feel free to reach out with any questions or ideas. We are excited to be pursuing this opportunity, and again, the Narberth Community Food Bank would very much like to remain at 201 Sabine, as Narberth has been our home since our cupboard doors first opened in 2008. Sincerely, the Food Bank Board of Directors, Gerald Herbst, President, David Fetterman, Ben Hearn, Marissa Gold, and Jennifer Milani. All right. Ms. Bryant.
Yeah, there was one other letter submitted to the packet. If you want, I'm happy to read it since you read the last couple.
Sure.
All right. This letter was submitted from Mr. David Brower, and the full letters in the packet. I'll just read a few of the paragraphs from it that get most of the concept from it. I believe that any planning for the redevelopment of 201 Sabine must also include planning for the renovation, adaptive reuse, or even the replacement of the Borough Hall. Any comprehensive plan for the future of these critical borough assets should include strategies for how both of these buildings and their adjacent sites should be maintained, redeveloped, or reimagined. Although educated as an architect, my 17 years as a member of the Planning Commission has trained me to think like a planner. That is, to think in timeframes of 25 to 50 years. That's what the Planning Commission did when we wrote the form-based code and more recently the Historic District Ordinance. That is the timeframe I think we need to consider when discussing the future of 201 Sabine. The 2018 KCBA Properties and Ground Assessment did an excellent job describing the many deficiencies of both buildings and the large capital expenditures that may be expected to maintain them in the coming years. What was not addressed in the assessment, because it was not part of their scope of work, was to think more expansively and creatively as to how these properties may be reimagined to not only correct the inadequacies of the existing structures, but also to provide for the needs of a 21st century municipal government. Skipping ahead, for these reasons, I believe that it's imperative that a qualified design team comprised of both architects and engineers undertake a comprehensive planning exercise that examines both sites. It is only after we have looked at both sites together that we can fully understand the potential that our buildings and open space have for us. This is a once-in-a-century opportunity, and we should take advantage of it. Thank you for your consideration.
All right, and we also have our letter from the Environmental Advisory Council supporting the Wheels on Haverford pilot program. The EAC would like to express its strong support of the Wheels on Haverford pilot program and its potential for improving transportation in the borough in a way that directly addresses our climate action goals in a cost-effective and efficient manner. Transportation is the largest share of greenhouse gas emissions in Narberth, accounting for 28% of greenhouse gas emissions overall. Addressing climate change and achieving the borough's goal of transitioning to 100% renewable energy for transportation by 2040 will require a multimodal complete streets approach to transportation. Improving bicycle infrastructure is an essential component of this approach. Improvements to bicycle infrastructure and programs like Wheels on Haverford have a number of benefits. Large reductions in greenhouse gas emissions can be achieved from increased bicycle use. Bicycle infrastructure can have an outsized impact in a community the size of Narberth. Connectivity to surrounding communities can be enhanced, and safety for all road users can be improved with protected bicycle lanes. The remainder of this letter will address each of these points in more detail. If you wish to learn in more detail, you may consult the packet. So thank you to, let's see, this is from Jesse Lytle, the chair, and members Rob Schlake, Alexandra Komarovskaya, Joe Toscano, Miriam Shakal, and also from Lee Davis, an alternate member of the EAC. All right. I believe that is all of the letters we've received for public comment. All right. Moving on to the next agenda item. This is the Kent Baird interview. So, Ms. Bryant.
Sure. Thank you, Council President. So hopefully, Mr. Cowan, some of this information the Sheriff Council will address some of the questions that you raised. If not, I'm happy again to chat more about it outside of the meeting here. In my time working here for the borough over the last 7 or 8 months here now, a number of potential projects and topics have come up where it just felt to me where there might be some need for some guidance and assistance. That ranges from things like wayfinding, master park planning, alternative transportation planning, so on and so forth. And full disclosure, I worked with Mr. Baird in previous employment and, think very highly of him. That's why I asked him to join us here tonight. And I think just from the work I've seen him do and the information he shared with me about some of the capacity that HRG could provide to the borough, I think they could potentially be a great fit for, just a whole sort of, smorgasbord of projects that have come up. While council did talk about HRG at its last meeting in regards to 201 Sabine, I would advise council that I don't think we're in a position tonight. I think there's more information we need to gather before really focusing on that and asking Mr. Baird any questions related to that project. Again, this is just someone that I thought might be interesting and helpful to bring the council's attention. There was not a formal RFP or anything like that done. This was just, me hearing about all the sort of things we're trying to accomplish in the borough, trying the best way I can to bring resources to council, to help accomplish that goal. If Council President, if you're fine with that, if there aren't any immediate follow-up questions about the rationale for why Mr. Baird is here tonight, I think he might have prepared a slideshow kind of talking a little about his capability and background if we're fine with moving on to that and then some questions.
I just want to make a general comment. I'm not sure if I can be heard or not, but the general comment is that in the past, the borough has always had a planner on its staff. So prior to contracting with Montgomery County Planning Commission, it's been our third-party planner, a dedicated third-party planner, doing all of our comprehensive plan, one-day code, doing other work processes, team up, task force. Prior to that, the borough had employed other planning groups for some general purpose plan. So we have, in the same way we employ an engineering firm or traffic engineer or building inspector. So I just want to make that general comment that this is not particularly out of the ordinary person interviewing a planner again at this juncture. We've done in the past. I'm sure we'll do it in the future. And we'll always probably must have a planner working in some capacity for the borough. And I'd actually one of the questions from Mr. Baird would be whether or not they work with other boroughs in the past within the general way.
Yeah, and I'm sure he'll be happy to speak to that. Yeah, and I want to emphasize too, I'm not, Mr. Baird is not here tonight because I'm proposing that we're going to get rid of Montgomery County Planning Commission. I think they have an important role for the borough in regards to the statutory requirements we have in terms of reviewing ordinances, reviewing land development plans, that sort of thing. I do think our contract with them, we pay a flat rate for a flat amount of hours. And I've been very happy with the volume of work the County Planning Commission has provided to us between the historic district, our saldo review, our zoning review. We've asked a lot of them over the last few years, and they've provided a lot for us. So I view, if we wanted to work with any projects with Mr. Baird and his firm, that would be, more like special projects, whereas the Montgomery County Planning Commission would be focused more on the statutory sort of support to our planning commission in regards to land development and ordinance reviews that they're legally required to do. And that way we're using our allocated hours we have with them for that, and not, exceeding those hours.
Yeah, that's right. There is a limit to the support they can provide. So depending on which projects we have going right now, like for instance, the Saldo review has been taking a large amount of planning hours kind of way in the background. So, depending on what we wanted to do, we may move beyond our agreement with Montgomery County and need more services. Are there any other questions before Mr. Baird does his presentation?
Fred, if I can just hop in, I'm sorry, with a homework. If you can all mute in the room, so Fred and Samantha, if you're not speaking, and if you, like Bob, we couldn't hear you because you were speaking obviously to the people in front of you. Folks in Borough Hall, if you just can remember to speak at your computer screen, I think those of us on Zoom can hear you a little bit better. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We will do our best. This is a challenging situation right now for everybody. So thank you for bearing with us, everybody on Zoom. All right, seeing no other concerns, Mr. Baird, if you'd like to go ahead.
Hi, and first let me make sure everybody can hear me. I'm obviously dialing in from home, and it's been a while since I've done a Zoom from my own home. I've been working from our office in King of Prussia for quite a while now, and enjoying being out of my house. I, like Samantha has described, I am a planner for HRG, Herbert, Roland, and Grubik. And tonight I'll share a little presentation for folks to get a little bit more information on HRG and some of my background and some of the things that I can offer should you need some assistance. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and make sure that I get things rolling here from slide number 1. Now, I want to make sure everybody can see my screen. Doing okay? Great. Thank you again for including me on your agenda. It sounds like from the public comment, Narberth is as interactive as I've found it to be over the last few months of getting to know the entire region. I'm new to HRG. In the fall of 2021, HRG hired me away from a national firm, and I had only been at that national firm for a little while to get exposure to the rest of Pennsylvania. I really was at an engineering firm 7 minutes from my house for quite a while, feeling pretty comfortable about the distance and the commute. I'm a single dad, and I like taking care of my daughter at the end of the day. And sure enough, HRG shared with me a culture that I hadn't experienced yet. One of great respect for coworkers, and an idea that they would like to share with everybody across the state a different type of service provision. And I know that you've probably heard that before from other consultants, but for the first time in my career, I have felt really welcome every single day that I go to work. And I want to try and sort of spread that feeling. I've been known to be a pretty upbeat person, a pretty chatty person, as Samantha will tell you. I've got a pretty diverse background, so it makes me interested in communicating with just about everybody. I work with a team of professionals who are pretty diverse in their skill set. So in the planning group that I team with on projects, I'm working with engineers who have been at this for a really long time, decades and decades. And of course, you can see on this list here, I'm working with landscape architects who are also accomplished planners and park planners. And I'm working with engineers who have decided to create think tanks. In the community that I'm working in, I'm working with engineers who are thinking beyond their own skill set to try and evolve who they are and who this company is. And so you can see some of the folks here include financial services background. We're one of the only firms in the entire state to provide any deep dive analysis of what municipalities are doing with their money, what municipal authorities are doing with their money, and planning, as Bob said, for those 20 years ahead. And I'm lucky to be working with a group that, if you can still see my screen, we're 100% employee owned. And as an ESOP, as they call them, it's not just the top tier of HRG that is owned, the majority of shares. We're really an employee owned firm, and we really look out for each other to move the firm forward. And so we have a committee of staff who guide all of our decisions as an ESOP, as an employee owned company. We really want to value each other. And so we've just been ranked one of the best places in Pennsylvania to work. Even with 260 employees, it feels like a small office. It feels like we communicate on a regular basis, especially now thanks to Zoom. But we do have lots of offices across Pennsylvania. King of Prussia is where I'm located, right up the street. And, we're a growing community of all professionals. All services in-house are provided. And we're adding new employees, as I'm sure other firms are looking to change their plans. We're growing all over the state, and we're hoping to take the services that we provide, which include engineering, planning, finance, municipal water and wastewater, transportation. But here again, capital improvement planning. Lots of services don't get that shakeout from other engineering teams. We provide on-site construction oversight and surveying and asset management. And this is kind of dull and boring, but for the first time in my life, I was able to reach out into a community of different services and say, hey, I need help on a project. Can I put your name down? And I have everybody available to me. The services that you see here provided by our planning group, these are all services that I personally have completed many projects on. I've been an appointed municipal planner, as Samantha described. That puts a planner in the position of being on 24-hour call to their client, but also getting to know their client just like family, and all the variety of needs that come into any discussion on any given week, beyond maybe just the zoning and subdivision land development ordinance stuff, which is critically important. There's also this vision setting that needs to happen. The conversations that happen, like it sounded like tonight, 201 Sabine, other parks, other trails. How do these things, fit together in your conversations every day? Thanks to COVID, more people are outside looking at trails, looking at bike routes, looking at parks. And they're, in some cases, tripping over each other. And they're revealing that they've got new interests and new desires for their communities. So comprehensive planning, active transportation planning, all of the vision setting, it's getting a whole new shakeout. It's getting a whole new look for all the municipalities in the area. They're also considering that everything that they do, everything on this list is grant fundable, right? And so especially thanks to the infrastructure money coming, American Rescue Plan monies, all of this is fundable more than it ever has been before. And so when you're in a position to look at these services and say, hey, should we just pick one and work on just one this year? Well, you're forgetting the fact that once you deny another service some of the grant funding that's available, you're waiting probably 2 years, right? And here are these grants that I've written to and been awarded money. I constantly farm the information from 45 different grant sources and then some. And I'm working now with an entire financial services department that does the same with me. So I have now 10 or 12 people constantly looking at where are the grants for all these great projects. And it turns out HRG also is so well known in the state for producing exceptional grant applications that they now help to oversee Pennsylvania's redevelopment assistance capital program, the RACB program that everybody wants to chase. It turns out HRG does the checks and balances, and they're still allowed to submit applications. A lot of the community development block grants, a lot of the support service grants, the state turns to HRG to say, are we doing this right? Are people submitting their reports on time? Are we getting this the way we should be getting it? And so the reputation for HRG is pretty substantial. And we talk about planning, and usually you'll hear people start to snore in a public meeting because that list of services is sort of, it's not real until they can possibly see it or they can possibly participate, right? Once you're on a committee, once you're on a study committee, once you're volunteering hours for a tree planting, that project becomes your own. You know, we've had projects that were just sort of a wayfinding signage project to identify one municipality versus another, you know, a gateway plus a kiosk. And all of a sudden we've got 12 people who want to keep that committee going because they have such a great time together. And they've found new uses for old signs and new ideas for online communication with their friends. How do we get the nature preserve to get more traction? You know, how do we get the message out? So participation is up everywhere. A typical process here for collaborating on any planning project, it always starts with the stakeholders, right? It always starts with getting to know each other and getting to know the community's needs. But more now than any time in the past, any grant that you'd like to go after requires a substantial amount of public engagement. And so for the team that I'm involved with, including myself, we've got thousands of hours of public facilitation, right? We've stood in front of our communities 3 nights a week, right? We've run county programs, in my case, with 54 municipalities or 18 county territories for land conservation. If you've seen my resume includes a huge history in land preservation, plus a matched up history in doing real estate development and analysis to get things right, to not just put a great big box in the middle of a cornfield, right? It's about looking at these places that people can attach themselves to and be a part of the future of. And so through this typical process, always at the end, people want to know, when's this thing going to be built? When's this thing going to be fixed? When's that bike route? As you were talking about Haverford and establishing bike routes, active transportation planning right now is super hot to get Pennsylvanians more active. You can see that across the state, people are closing streets to open up for restaurants, open up for pedestrian strolling. And if you're a borough surrounded by so much development that you're always going to be the epicenter of community activity. COVID or not, people want to be together. And if you're the kitchen, if you're that sort of kitchen counter that everybody wants to hang around, right? Everybody wants to be in Narberth, establishing more opportunities for pedestrian safety, for bikeability, for creating loops that people can be proud that they walked. You know, we've come up with some really fun names for loops that, that equal a 2 mile or a 3 mile loop. And people really attach and create walking groups for those loops. And so the possibilities also, they bring different groups together. So on one side of the screen here, you have Bensalem Township. On this other side of the screen, you have Bensalem Township School District and a whole lot of people doing a tree planting. In the center, you see one of the plans that I came up with for a constructed wetlands project. Initially, it was just one big basin. Somebody handed me a project and said, we can't believe that these other folks, I came up with the idea of a great big hole in the ground. So instead, what we did is we created a constructed wetlands situation behind an elementary school that is now an environmental education center with a trail and an under 12 ball field and an entirely restored riparian buffer to a little stream that flooded for the last 30 years, right? A previous firm said, well, we'll just dig this big pit and all the water will flow right in it. Well, no, we analyzed it and we found out that's not the case. And then we went and we got the grant money and look at how happy these people are, usually calling to complain about the flooding and now out on a chilly fall morning digging in the ground. So the possibilities go beyond just the physical implementation of something and create friendships that might not have been there before. Inclusivity is not hot because it's a trend, it's because it's right. So when we talk about planning in any regard, whether it's funded by grants or funded by everybody's hard-earned tax dollars here, we include accessibility discussions, we include spaces for people to have passive recreation and just connect with nature, places for active recreation to get healthy. We talk about innovation. all of the playgrounds now and all of the activity that you have outdoors ought to identify the chance for anybody of any age group, anybody of any differing ability, right? So we've got some really great playgrounds that are going in that connect kids with autism with nature, right? Nature playscapes with kids with differing abilities. And even the smallest of spots that you might have anywhere, we can imagine and drop in a pocket park. These little forgotten spaces add value like any large piece of open space. Any park adds value to the real estate next to it, adds peace of mind to the residents who live next to it, and create volunteer opportunities and participation that you never had before. Active recreation, of course, HRG is known for any level of active recreation, from planning design to construction. And passive places that are just maybe forgotten spots, you know, that run along an old stream side or an old roadway, a corridor that needed greenery, right? These spots are adding great color to every community. And when we talk about how we're looking at maybe Narberth, we've got some great examples for corridor redevelopment. When I first arrived to see Narberth a few weeks ago, in different ways, I usually visit a community at the weirdest hours. When I did the riverfront plan for Conshohocken and White Marsh, I was there every chance I could at 4 o'clock in the morning so that I could start to see the crowd pour into the Schuylkill River Trail. And we counted 1,800 people using the Schuylkill River Trail on a weekend. But I had to be there. I just had to be there to see the first person on a bicycle. These big corridor planning strategies, they start to include parks, they start to include streetscapes and frontage and crossings. All of this is grant fundable. If you think about Montgomery and Winterwood and Haverford and creating great big loops for people to walk, here's a chance. We know it's possible and it's fundable. And how to imagine this kind of a thing. Sure enough, you're putting a lot of effort into your zoning and subdivision and land development. Everybody knows Narberth thanks to the form-based code. And so a lot of my planning conferences I've been to with your previous officials making presentations, Narberth was, well spoken of for a long time. And it's been a model for other communities across the state. And so I can share with you that we're always looking for opportunities to share with others. Where are these sort of overlaps of pedestrian, bicycle, stormwater management, and streetscape improvement? And these are multiple layers of grants in my mind as I'm seeing them. And so if there's any questions, I can go back and revisit anything, but my express intent was to share with you that the list of services that HRG can provide, if you would like, and the history of the projects that I've got included in my repertoire, they're available to you, and they're real with results that you can visit or you can visually, attach yourself to. I'm always concerned that folks that I work with pay attention to what's possible and what's fundable. So I'm not simply a person who likes to plan and leave a plan yet to be implemented. Every second of the day, I'm concerned about how things are going to be accomplished for folks. To move from something like this, which at one time I'm sure was just fine for folks, and now, in part, thanks to COVID, folks are walking and biking a lot more, as they should. So if anybody's got any questions, especially, I can go back to my list of services and talk in any regard about what I've been lucky enough to accomplish in my life, and how that might play out for you, how HRG or how I could help you accomplish what you'd like to accomplish in Narberth.
Thank you, Mr. Baird. Let me look around for questions. So first, to our council members online, Cindy or Michelle, do you have Cindy?
I guess just more of a comment. Thanks, Ken. I appreciate how you kind of acknowledge both the physical and the social ecosystem. And I think that it can be frustrating and confusing when the public hears the plan, but really I would suggest with Samantha's or under Samantha's new leadership and kind of approach to borough management, we're understanding that one plan is so intricately created or connected rather to the other.
Yep.
And one plan it is codependent or reliant on another. So I thank you for acknowledging both the physical and the social ecosystems in our small little borough. And underscoring what is possible and what is fundable as the chair of FNA is music to my ears. And I appreciate that you listed those grants.
Yeah. Well, and you know, I have to say that some of the bug, I caught some of the bug when I was going to school. I was on the board of directors of a place called Eco Village at Ithaca. So when I went to planning school, my entire idea was there ought to be a place that you can go where you can care about the environment, but also be around people and build a deck with your daughter if you wanted to build a deck. You know, I wanted balance. I wanted to be connected with nature, but I wanted to be around folks. And so I was on the board of Eco Village. And the way they talked about money, it was pretty desperate. So I caught the bug pretty early, where to go and chase down grants to realize your dream. And so it is, you know, in this particular case, as I'm looking here, I can give you examples of overlaps where, in fact, working with Samantha, we were able to pair some funding for comprehensive planning with active transportation planning and accomplish a great big chapter of the comp plan with grant monies, you know, from different sources and strategies that ultimately, when you do an active transportation plan, it ought to and can include wayfinding and ought to and can include a strategy for your parks and for your municipal buildings, right? And so all of a sudden you start to layer up the grant money to accomplish multiple things on this list. And it's, in fact, for some of the grant agencies, a real joy. It's music to their ears when you can say, well, I could just do a comprehensive plan and ask you for $90,000, or I could do this comprehensive plan, pair it with an active transportation plan and get $20,000 from somebody else. And then, of course, they say, whew, you're only really asking for X dollars from us now? So it's a nice way to, you know, diversify your approach too. And you create more friends by doing that. But yeah, very concerned with it.
Thank you. Michelle, did you have a? Okay.
So,
Okay.
are you able to hear me, Ken?
I can, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to first appreciate the way that you're an integrated thinker, and then also ask a practical question. I mean, once you start to see everything connect, how do you actually get started on a project? I'm sure you have plenty of examples, you know, but we've already heard tonight from an architect in our community, a valued member of the community, Dave Brower, that we should consider this property where we are here together with the 201 Sabine. And then in my mind, I'm thinking what could be a one-year project becomes a 5-year project. So could you speak to that? How you get started?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because I think there is a little bit of a fuzzy gray area when you receive a grant. Let's say it's something that's grant fundable, right? Once the grant comes in and you've really got to get out there and start bidding for contractors to arrive and share with you a vision of demolition of some building or grading for a brand new park or preparing for a regional police department that includes staff and secure gates and all of the obscure and weird things that come with off-limits areas of a police base or department. There is a place where you've won your grant and then you launch into these RFPs and requests for bids and estimates. And that process is something that HRG has perfected time and again across the state. HRG is the #1 municipal engineer in the entire state for municipal contracts with municipalities and authorities. So we've perfected a system for getting the information of our project out and getting the best contractors to reply to those requests for bids. Managing project management, which I also do, is sort of a nuanced thing to keep people on track. We often create deadlines that we're intending to celebrate a project with a community. So while there's the physical accomplishment of a project, and that takes some months, we also like to put some pressure on the situation to remind everybody that we're trying to celebrate this thing, right? And so with RACB dollars in my hometown here, there's a brand new park coming online, and they have an intention to celebrate it right when everybody's out of school and ready to celebrate a park. And so they plan ahead like that. And we take those things into consideration too. We take schools and community events and all kinds of festivals and parades, and we add that to our mix. But as it goes, the firm I'm at now has produced more constructed parks and projects than just about any in the entire state.
I would follow up on Rob's question briefly, unless somebody else was going to ask something, because I appreciate your question. And I think that's a great question, Rob, with respect to, on the one hand, I love everything you're saying about taking a very comprehensive and inclusive approach, because in fact, these projects are interconnected. And one of the things that's always come up over and over again repeatedly in my years on council is when we want to advance a project, one of us will note, or a member of the community or the borough manager will note correctly, well, we could, but that has an impact on this over here. And this we haven't worked out. So we got to put this on hold while we figure that out. And then we can't really apply for that grant because it won't be ready, but we got to, so there's all these moving pieces. And the more inclusive we are, the more comprehensive we are in our view, the more moving pieces are going to start to come into play, and the more somebody's going to say, oh, well, if you're going to do that, gosh, don't do that without looking at this as well. Like Rob just said, well, don't look at, Sabine, you got to look at that with the municipal building too. And in fact, that came up with Norbert's Park when we were talking about possibly moving ahead on a park plan. And I said, well, wait a minute. Why plan one park when we have two parks and it's like a system of parks, and we should probably look at them together? So the question being, let me bring this to a question: how at the this is sort of at the entrance of the this is sort of before you're applying for grants, when you're sort of narrowing down your visions and this broad comprehensive view to the things you're actually going to pursue. And that means making some decisions, right? And probably ruling some things out and saying these things are going to be out of consideration. How do you help a community that is full of creative spirits and great ideas and openness to great ideas? How do you help a community get to the decision points that need to be made?
Yeah, I'm so grateful that you put it like that. How do you touch on the fact that you've got so much potential and so many people willing to help you achieve that potential? There's few places like that. I've worked in communities who just, speak to me at the beginning of a park and open space plan and then check in the middle and check in at the end, despite my numerous calls and emails, right? I think when you start to talk about parks in one category, having multiple parks, but in your case, not having many parks, if that fits the category of a master park plan, not just a one park master plan or master site development plan, as they're called, for one, but we can strategize all your park and recreation needs at once. And what rises to the top, if that's an okay way of saying it, we try to achieve the most with the least, right? The most benefit for the most residents with the least amount of financial impact to you, most grants, right? So we try to achieve these things so that we are reaching the crowd the way that we want to. We want people to be happy sooner, right? In your family, you want people to be happy sooner. Sometimes you make poor decisions, and you run out and you get a tub of ice cream because everybody's so crowded in the house for 5 days. And you regret it. But, in the case of looking at 201 Sabine, or in the case of looking at your municipal building, we actually provide that service at HRG. So our financial services department will take a look at your assets, all of the assets that you have, and create a strategy for managing them. And if disposition is one of those, outcome decisions, that's included. But the vision that you have starts everything, right? So if you say to yourself, gosh, we've always wanted to have a central location for our building. Maybe you're not in a central location. Some communities have tried that strategy. Or maybe they've wanted a more interactive indoor recreation center. Some of them are going the way of creating community centers attached to their township or borough. So the vision starts. What do we really want? Regardless of what we have out there stuck in the ground, what do we really want to be known for? What do we want to see when we arrive at work every day for working in the Borough Hall? So that vision, it doesn't take as long as most folks think, because you've already described tonight through your public comment and through your questions, hey, we care about each other, and we don't want to forget that we care about each other. Now, what we have to decide is, are we caring about each other in the right location, with the right buildings, with the right parks? And if we're not, we make the statement first, I still care about you, but I'm going to put you in a better building here, or with a better park here, or on a better walking trail here, so that you and your friend who's in a wheelchair or your grandmother can walk together safely and cross a street and use a building that has maybe more access to the sun or has better parking. So there's that statement that comes from visioning, which is caring and looking at the forward momentum together. I think the fact that you've got existing buildings that everybody loves is great. Doesn't mean that the buildings are great. It means that it's great that they have such passion for Narberth, and that's a great place to start. Some of my background, as you might have seen, includes commercial real estate development analysis. So, I helped to teach real estate development, marketing, and finance when I was at Cornell, and later was director of acquisitions for DeLuca Homes after I had been a county program director for land preservation at Bucks County. My goal at DeLuca Homes was to design villages, preserve farms, and design greater density and walkable communities. And then, of course, the market crashed. But I had about 9 villages in design and in the works to create places that had a sense of place and activity, and there was always a buzz and front porch and interaction. So I helped to teach people real estate development and analysis. And I also helped to tell people, the one thing that you shouldn't do with real estate, even though it's hard to do, is fall in love with it. It can change over time. It can be something that we can improve on. So if something like 201 Sabine or Borough Hall, we do something of an asset management strategy and one or both of them go away, something better is coming. You are definitely not, as a council, making the statement that we're going to take away everything and leave you worse off than you started. That's clear to me from what everybody has said. And so I think that's, a positive step to always remark back to everybody. It's great to have these questions and this input, and it's all positive. The change part, the little transition in the middle between the 20 years that you've lived and the 20 years you want to live going forward, that's tough. Change is tough and transition is tough. But I think you've got great potential in this community, and I don't see it as a struggle at all. And we've got the background and the services history to lend you a hand for sure.
Yeah, Kent, thanks for that thorough answer to those questions provided. I just want to make sure here tonight we have a chance for everyone on council who has questions to be able to get, have a chance to get their questions in as well. Just briefly, I wanted to note, as a follow-up to Councilmember McGreevy's question, I think that something that's worked really well with me and planners in the past, such as Mr. Baird, is while I'm certainly not, bad at visioning, and while Mr. Baird certainly has good project management skills, I think there's been a great yin and yang in the past between, the skill set I like to think that I bring in terms of getting a project from A to B and keeping things moving along, and the sort of creative kind of thinking and visioning and helping me understand what those points are to get from A to B are that someone like Mr. Baird could bring to the borough.
And so, Councilor Vice President Bush, I'm just going to pass the computer over to you.
Hi, Kent. Thanks so much for being here tonight. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. I'm not sure I can hear you. I'm going to turn on my volume. That's not going to work. Maybe yours. There. Kent, I've lived in Narberth in or near Narberth most of my life, and one of the things that Narberth historically has done is moved very, very slowly and cautiously in managing change. And usually that's resulted in getting things right. So we have the good fortune of kind of like being in a place that's been pretty well cared for many, many decades, and also has tremendous potential to be even better and to have all of the things that so many of our neighbors want, like biking trails and like new parks and a kind of a more, like say, better use of all the facilities that we already have. But I would say in the past 10 years, we've made efforts, we've hired consultants to sort of address different pieces of, say, the same project. So we had a master plan done, kind of a comprehensive master plan done to show us what the economic impacts would be like of maintaining what we've got, say, for the next 20 years. And then we had a public engagement process that we hired another consultant to engage the community in some visioning and some trying to prioritize what the community's will was for change. And then we had, but they didn't sort of address, but that organization didn't quite address the issues around the economics questions that we were facing. So we've hired another consultant to look at the economics. And what ended up happening is we got a lot of really good information, and we had a lot of very important conversations over the years. But at every council meeting, someone from the public inevitably says, guys, you keep hiring new consultants to do the same project. You keep hiring another consultant and you keep hiring more consultants, and when are you going to actually do something? And it's not that, we can see as council members that we're just getting more and more information because we want to move deliberately and comprehensively and do the right thing ultimately for our community. But the perception often is, well, you keep hiring more consultants and you're just kind of churning and wasting money and not getting anywhere. And so I'm wondering, how would you address that issue in our community? Well, because here we are, like sort of on the doorstep of maybe engaging another consultant, another firm, and clearly you have this, this really incredible offering, the synthesis of all these areas that you can offer to us. But how would you help us with that question that's inevitable in the public mind?
Well, the first response is that HRG has everything in-house. And so unlike other engineering firms, we've got that economic finance background in-house. And it's grounded with all of the people in that department. It's grounded in real history. It's not sort of a theoretical practice for HRG. The people in the department have achieved the work that they are describing and analyzing. So the first thing I think we would do is take all the planning that you've done, all the documents and all the studies, and put it into our house and come back with a response that says, if you choose this decision now, what will it cost you? And if you choose this decision, B, what will it take? What kind of funding and what kind of participation from your community will it take? And I think, in the law of threes, you'll find, I think years and years ago, Yale University did a study of people prefer to have three choices. It may be that you just come up with a very select number of choices and you say, we're going to make a decision on this. And so HRG has everybody in-house that can make a review of your current and past work come to the light. It's clear people want action.
Getting the microphone back here again. When we get a letter from, say, a public letter, a public comment like the one we got earlier this evening from an architect who's served on our planning commission for 17 years, he makes a very good but very challenging point. And the point is, you guys should look again at something that you have already looked at and sort of pushed beyond. And it's a really, I think it's a real knot for council members, because we see the intelligence of his comment, we see the reasoning behind it, but in some ways, it almost feels like, well, that ship sailed. On the other hand, the borough is going to be here forever, and we're not. And so I think he makes a really good point that, you've got to think about this in terms of an enormous time horizon and get it right. And so I don't know, I'm just appreciating this opportunity to speak to someone who, I think you're able to articulate the importance of those things. And I just appreciate that all of the conversation that's going on here. And thank you for your answers.
My pleasure.
All right, I think, Samantha, if you do have, okay. Thank you. I think I don't see any other comments from council, so appreciate your time. And thank you very much, Mr. Ray.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And it's nice getting to know everybody. And if you've got more business and you need me to hop off, I can stop sharing. Is that the plan for tonight?
Yeah, we continue to,
Okay.
event items. And I hope you enjoyed your visits to Narberth.
Yeah, greatly. Thank you. I appreciate it, and have a good night, everybody.
Alrighty. Thank you. All right. Let's move to our next agenda item. Oh, no, Samantha?
If I may make a request here, our bond counsel, I wasn't, we got the late start and all that. Our bond counsel is here this evening for item 9A, and I apologize, I didn't ask this before. So if it's possible maybe to talk about item 9A before 8A, and then we can resume the agenda.
Yeah, sure. I probably should have moved this earlier.
You need a motion?
Organize the agenda to address item 9A before 9A. Before 8A.
Okay, so a second.
Second.
Motion is seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor of organizing the agenda?
Aye.
All right, it's unanimous. So we will move to discussion of 9A, which is consideration of approval of borough debt. Anyone like to make a motion? It should be, well, regardless.
Cindy,
Do you have the motion sheet, Cindy?
I'm sorry, there's not a motion sheet for this because it's a consideration. Do we need to?
Sorry, just someone, we need a motion.
I move to consider the approval of ordinance 1039.
Okay, seconded. Is there, all right, so we are discussing 1039. Who'd like to, Samantha or Hank, or who's going to lead the
Sure, I'll
outline it?
Sorry, I'm just making a little note to have a. For item 9A, couple things for council to note. So per the memo that I included in the packet, our original bidder that we were going to work with, People's Bank, actually withdrew their bid. They claimed that they didn't realize that the note was taxable versus non-taxable, despite the bid very clearly saying it was taxable. So we will be, I'm asking council to instead consider the next best bid we got from the First National Bank of Newtown. Public Financial Management provided an analysis of the bid from them. And while it's not as good as the bid from People's Bank, it still meets the goal of saving the borough money through doing this refinancing of that taxable loan. The other change that we're going to be making for the ordinance for tonight is the ordinance calls for going for a 7-year fixed rate, or I'm sorry, calls for a 10-year fixed rate from First National Bank of Newtown. And I appreciate the analysis our council president actually did and found that the 7-year fixed rate actually is slightly better for the borough. So my thanks to our bond counsel and our financial consultant who did the work necessary today for us to instead consider an ordinance that would have that 7-year fixed rate proposal from First National Bank of Newtown. So we've talked a lot about this refinancing at our previous meetings. Just the 15-second recap is the purpose of this is to refinance the borough's existing debt that we have right now to save the borough money and to take out new debt for building renovations for 100 Conway and 80 Windsor. Thanks to the refinancing, the cost of the new debt for the next few years is going to be equal to the debt we're paying now, thanks to what we're saving on the old debt and the way that it's been structured. And it's something the council has, supported, and finance and administration has talked about and supported. So really tonight is the formality of actually approving the ordinance to do the refinancing. Hank, is there anything you'd like to come up here and add, or is that a pretty good summary?
That's a good summary. The ordinance authorizes the calling of the old debt and then authorizes the new debt and accepting the proposals from the two banks, Phoenixville Federal Bank and Trust for the tax exempt piece, and then First National Bank of Newtown for the taxable piece of it. It's all in accordance with state law.
Okay, is there any discussion of this in council? Anyone have questions?
Yeah, I just have one quick question. What distinguishes this one as taxable versus non-taxable?
So the debt you're refinancing was originally structured, there's actually 3 notes that you're calling. 2 of them were heavily taxed. And the third one was taxable at the time it was issued in 19. So we can't replace the taxable with the non-taxable. It's just too complicated. The size is a little too complicated. So I'm not sure originally why it was designated taxable as opposed to tax exempt.
Yeah.
I'm going to answer that. Sorry to cut you off. So the one note is taxable because it was for the roof at 201 Sabine, and because the borough rents 201 Sabine out to taxable entities, the property is taxed and the notes are taxed.
And now we're not using it for such a thing, but as he says, it's too complicated to switch it.
Yeah, because we would be refinancing outstanding debt, which that was the original.
Oh, I see, okay.
Exactly. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions from council members? Okay, seeing none, let's vote on approving ordinance 1039 for borough debt. All those in favor of the ordinance? Okay, that's unanimous. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, we're going to need to sign some things here in the background. I believe we can still move on. No, well, we'll need the borough manager for the next item. So I'm going to take a moment to, sorry, Andrea.
Are you going to need my signature, or do you need it tonight? I can drive down there to sign, or?
Oh, that's,
or can I do it in the morning?
We can do it in the morning.
Okay, So I'll stop down before work tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't consider that as when we were talking about planning this meeting. We are rapidly signing some documents here, and then we'll move on to. Okay, you ready? Well, we'll go back to 8A, which was discussion of COVID mitigation.
Sure. I don't know if I kind of like.
Try it again.
Can people on Zoom, if I just talk kind of loud, or do I need to unmute mine as well?
You need to unmute whoever's speaking, if they can unmute, and if others can mute, that really helps with feedback. So unless you're speaking, mute. There we go.
All right. Yeah, I'm not sure why I'm getting feedback.
I think it's Rob's iPhone.
My microphone is off. Because I didn't activate it.
All right. So there's a memo provided in the packet to Borough Council. In light of the Omicron variant, I thought this might be a good opportunity for Borough Council to talk more about our COVID mitigation. And I had a few thoughts in the memo for Council. We've already moved forward with some of the ideas that I prepared in the memo for Council. For example, N95 masks, which this is one, have been ordered for Borough staff. And going forward, we've been providing regular cloth masks to the public. And going forward, we'll have the N95s available to the public. Additional signage has been posted in the Borough Administrative Office about the need to wear a mask and why wearing a mask is important. And as I mentioned, the memo staff already are required to be vaccinated, and unvaccinated staff have been doing weekly COVID testing. And everything we've been trying to do is in compliance with CDC guidelines. But if there's any additional action or ideas that Council has or would like to, talk about, I'm certainly very open to that.
All right, Andrea?
So I think what we're doing tonight is one thing that we can continue to do for the moment, keep a quorum in the room of just the people that have to be in the room. And then anybody who is unnecessary to be in the room, perhaps call in on Zoom like we've done. That way it gives more space between people and less chance of contact. That was one thing. That was, if I think of something else, I'll let you know. But that was one.
Yeah, and in past sessions, we haven't had this kind of difficulty with the owl, and it's moved more smoothly on Zoom. So for members of the public who are here tonight, we're hopeful that we'll be back to our usual reliable owl functioning shortly. We'll figure out what went wrong. I think in terms of a quorum, we need to have at least 4 members in the room pretty much at all times in a meeting. So I would prefer to have 5 planned to come to a meeting, and that way if something happens, we should still have 4 to function. So at least 5 council members should plan to be, 5 council members should plan to be at the meetings. And that way we'll still be able to do business if something comes up. That's my suggestion. Cindy?
I have a question. When it says staff, does that mean police will be wearing N95s too? And the public should expect that when a police officer approaches them for a traffic stop or a house visit, that the officers will be masked in N95s?
They have been masked. Can the borough provide them with N95s?
We certainly could.
So that would be a possibility.
I would suggest that police having such an interaction with folks that we don't put the public in a position to say, I'm going to ask you to please put a mask on, that if we're asking our borough staff to do that, we should extend that to all borough employees, which would include our police department.
The police have already been instructed on that.
Oh, great. So they will be wearing the N95s. Okay, thank you.
Well, they've been wearing masks. We can get them N95s.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then as council, I would just say at some point as this evolves, do we want to reconsider the vaccination requirement? I don't feel like we need to do that now, but perhaps that's something we may want to revisit. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Are there any other, okay, Ira?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, one second. Okay, a process question, Barbara?
I don't want to unmute myself.
Okay.
My iPad keeps turning the speakers back on. I keep turning the volume off.
I can't hear Barbara.
Okay, she's having an iPad feedback issue.
Okay.
Right now.
Are you hearing feedback right now is her question? Are you people, no, okay, no.
It's
All right,
not the problem.
okay. Sorry, it's a technical question, so we're trying to figure out where the source of the feedback is. It's probably me, because I'm usually doing anyway, moving along. So going back to the COVID mitigation questions, anybody else have comments? Ira, go ahead, unmute yourself.
I can speak to that, please.
Okay.
So, Samantha, have you given any thoughts to booster requirements, or is it, has that not been considered?
I haven't given any thought to it myself. That's a sort of a question that I really defer to Borough Council for consideration.
I would suggest that we extend the vaccine requirement to boosters, given that the evidence is pretty clear that that's necessary to protect against Omicron and is the latest guideline.
All right, I propose it, sorry, Andrea?
Are you gonna vote on that suggestion, or I have a different suggestion?
I was going to suggest that we put that on the agenda for another meeting, that, give people some time to digest it, since it's not formally on the agenda.
I know we have a requirement that people who have not shown proof of vaccination get tested every week. With this Omicron variant, it doesn't seem to matter if people are vaccinated or unvaccinated. Do we want to extend it and make testing for all employees every week, so that a vaccinated person who's maybe asymptomatic doesn't spread it to the rest of the group?
Samantha, do you have any thoughts on that?
So I'm honestly not really going to have any, I think a lot of this conversation is above my pay grade, so to speak. And I think, obviously in whatever council decides, that's what we're going to do. I do think it might be good for tonight to just collect, I'm writing down all this stuff everyone's saying. And then at the meeting on the 19th, council could formally vote on any changes it wants to make. I also don't know, I hate to equivocate, but also recognizing that every day there's a new, record for number of cases and all that sort of thing. What is there potential harm as well in waiting 2 weeks on making any decisions on anything? So I apologize for how not useful that answer was.
Samantha, I think it's incredibly useful. And I was going to say, I think this is so timely, given that we're in an upward case. I think that we should take the time to probably not punt this 2 weeks out. I'm sorry, Andrew.
That's what I would offer that.
Sorry. I wonder, with testing being so hard to come by, I wonder if having vaccinated and boosted people test if they're not symptomatic, if that would take away from folks who really do need to get tested. That would be my only consideration there. And I'm sorry.
It's a valid concern. Optimally, everybody would have tests. Realistically, people are having trouble getting them. They're both valid concerns.
Okay, so I have a question. Do we currently have a policy in place stating if somebody has symptoms, they need to get tested? It's sort of common sense, but is that like an official policy of ours, or what do we think of that as sort of the bare minimum? Like if you have symptoms,
Are we not requiring people to quarantine if they have symptoms, whether they test or not?
I'm looking at the guidance. Okay.
So the official policy that council had passed, a month or two ago, only talks about required to be vaccinated or tested. Outside of council, I have been basically, for administrative staff, have been enforcing a policy of whatever the CDC requirements are is what we're going to do. So if someone is symptomatic, I have asked them to get tested, and thankfully, no one administratively has tested positive for COVID, but if anyone did, I would require them to follow the CDC guidelines for testing and quarantining and all that sort of thing, even though that's not an official policy of council, if that helps reassure people at all.
It's my recollection that our current policy is that that all borough employees are to be testing weekly if they're not vaccinated. And I think that's a good policy. I think it's a good policy to continue with personally, and that's what I'd like to see us do, continue with the policy that we have. Because I think we were looking at like a very, very tiny fraction of the staff that maybe have made that choice to be tested, if I'm not wrong. I thought it was only something like 2 out of all of the borough employees, and they may have medical reasons for not wanting the vaccine. And I guess if 500,000 cases of COVID today or 600,000 cases of COVID today isn't enough evidence that you should get vaccinated, I don't know. I guess I don't. For whose good is requiring that 2 people who currently are getting tested weekly be vaccinated? I guess I don't understand it philosophically. I understand why. I'm a public health person. I think everyone should be vaccinated, but I guess I don't really see what we're driving for here, other than I don't see how it's a net good to make that requirement.
Maybe someone can answer that for me.
Samantha, see your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to make sure you're muted. Sorry. All right, so this I don't know if this helps the conversation or not. I don't feel comfortable getting into the personal medical status of borough employees in a public conversation. I will say that the number of employees who are testing weekly is larger than 2.
Oh.
Yeah.
How many municipalities or in like southeastern Pennsylvania currently require their staff to be vaccinated? I don't mind. I mean, if it's something that's being done,
And that's fine, but I guess I also don't want us to create bad feeling among faithful employees to the borough.
All right, Barbara.
Hopefully this won't create terrible feedback. So I didn't, maybe I'm wrong, but I didn't think anyone was suggesting that we require unvaccinated people to get vaccinated. I think the question was, should we require vaccinated people to get boosters?
oh,
And so that's a different, in my mind, that's a very different question.
oh, that's easy.
Yeah.
Sure, of course.
Well, you can say that, but maybe we'll decide not, but I think that's what the question was. And so.
Can you check? But it's Cindy based.
Well, I can't see her because I can.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Bob, I can't
Cindy,
really.
is that?
Yeah, so I think that I'm very comfortable with saying we are a public service. There's lots of examples where being vaccinated is now a requirement for employment. That's not the will of council, so I'll respect that. I think the questions that I have are do we require the 3rd shot, otherwise known as the booster, which we now know really means you're, quote, fully vaccinated. The second is I would revisit for folks who are choosing not to be vaccinated, should tax dollars be paying for your time off? That's a policy question that I don't think we need to answer now. But yes, my understanding was, are we now moving to fully vaccinated includes a third shot or a booster if you had J&J?
Yeah, I mean, but actually, it's a good policy question that you're asking. Are we going to agree to pay for the health care of someone who gets COVID and then is out for 10 days or 20 days or 30 days? Like, I mean, I don't know if we can make that policy decision, but in a way, you could offer that as a choice. If we were to make that the policy, we could offer that as the choice to the employees to say, look, you can either get vaccinated or you're going to waive your rights to health care, to medical leave. I don't know if that can be done legally, but that's the choice. That's the reasonable, rational choice.
All right.
If I may, that also I've done a little reading on that, and that can also backfire, Bob, in that people may kind of overlook small symptoms, sniffles or something. They may, if they're less symptomatic but not, they may overlook it and say, I don't want to get tested because I don't want to miss 10 days of work or 5 days of work. We
are requiring them, Andrea, to get tested each week so that it would be caught, just as a counter thought to that.
That's right. Yes.
I know the solicitor's not here. I'm going to go out on a limb and say I do not think we can withhold health care from people who are not vaccinated.
Yeah, that's a little bit, okay, and Barbara has a point on that too. So.
I just wanted to say that wasn't what Cindy said. Cindy said, should we be compensating them for the time that they take during the day to get tested? Or should we be making them test on their own time? I think that's what Cindy was saying. I don't think she was talking about saying, we're not going to cover your health care costs if you get COVID.
No, I think
I agree with
opposite
that. A big question we'd have to ask.
No, Barbara, thank you. What I said was, if you're choosing not to be vaccinated, then we should not be using taxpayer dollars if you're off sick. So let's say if you then test positive with COVID and you're out for 20 days or 15 days. But yes, there are lots of companies. If you choose not to get vaccinated, they charge you more for health insurance.
All right. So if I can just try to move. So some of these are things that we're going to need to research. I hear a potential motion, or I hear a potential change, which is the requirement of boosters in addition to the vaccination to be considered fully vaccinated.
So moved.
Would anyone like to make that motion? Okay. Well, let me see. Samantha has a thought here.
Yeah, that's the exact sort of thing actually I was going to suggest. The only question beyond that I have for council is what time frame would you want to provide any kind of time frame for employees to get said booster? And also, if employees are if we're having more employees have to test, would council have any appetite for allowing the expanded use of at-home testing until, like, let's say if you wanted to make an immediate, if an employee hasn't had the booster yet, but like, let's say tomorrow, like, schedules the appointment to get a booster, like, would you be willing to allow some sort of grace period if an employee proves like, hey, like, I'm trying to get the booster, in terms of either not having to test or doing at-home testing or something like that?
Okay, do you want to?
The end of the month seems like a reasonable time frame.
Yeah, it's very easy to understand.
I mean, I would suggest that it should be scheduling an appointment, just because I'm not sure how easy it is that if you schedule it within a certain, like, over the next 2 weeks, perhaps, if you schedule your appointment within the next 2 weeks, you'll be considered to be in compliance. No? Just in case it takes longer to actually get your appointment. And then in between, all right, so there's.
Do you need a new motion?
I'm just articulating what I'm hearing, and we can try to formulate this into a formal motion. So is there appetite to ask people who are currently vaccinated but not boosted to be taking weekly tests in addition to everybody else? Is that, I'm seeing no's. So let's just talk about booster, okay? Let's say, Ira, do you want to go back to your motion? about a booster and see if we can,
Yeah, I move that folks that who are vaccinated get the booster in addition, you know, by the end of the month, if it's available.
I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry. Would you mind repeating that? Like talk at your computer?
I'm sorry, Michelle. You're muted.
Oh, no.
Michelle.
I'm sorry. I couldn't hear you, Ira. I just was wondering if you could repeat your motion.
Okay, let's repeat the motion. I'll repeat it. The motion is that we extend our requirements for borough employees who, in order to be considered vaccinated, they need the booster shot as well, and they schedule it by the end of the month in order to be considered vaccinated. Otherwise, they'll fall under the unvaccinated provisions in the borough code, or in the borough rules, and they'll have to go to weekly testing. Is that an accurate summary?
I'll
Okay.
second that.
All right, so let me
We
go
don't have a
to,
second in order to have a discussion, so.
Thank you.
Seconding. Okay.
okay, and let's see if that is sufficient for Samantha's purposes. Is this something that we can implement?
I think that, that sounds, without knowing how difficult it is to get a booster at this point, that sounds reasonable to me.
I believe the county and a local Ardmore has stepped up booster availability. So I don't think you're going to take 3 weeks. That's for sure. We may feel confident to tighten that up a little bit, given the surge.
Okay. All right. Is there more discussion? Do you want to propose an amendment there, Cindy, or let's.
You have a motion on the table. You either have to, you have a motion on the table. You either have to vote for it or not.
Well, we can move to amend it, I think. Okay. But in any case, I don't see a motion to amend. So is there more discussion? Right now, the motion is, as described, it's get boosted by the end of the month or be considered unvaccinated for borough employees. Okay. Is there any more discussion on this? All right, seeing none, let's have a vote. All those in favor of this policy change? Okay, it's unanimous. Thanks, everyone. All right, I'd like to move on from the COVID mitigation protocols in general. I think we have a topic to examine further, which is something for John Walco to look at. So, moving on to item 9B, which is a consideration. Okay, 9B. Anyone like to make a motion for 9B?
Sure. I move that we consider PennDOT consultant selection procedures for the Narberth Avenue Bridge construction inspector, which I believe we were going to approve a resolution, but that's not how it's worded. So I will ask the borough manager to clarify my motion. Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, that one is on me. I'm sorry I wrote that action related. It should be consideration of approval of resolution 2022-02 for consultant selection procedures. And Michelle, you're muted.
I move we consider resolution 2022-02 for PennDOT consultant selection procedures for the Narberth Avenue Bridge construction inspector.
Okay, is there a second for that resolution, for that motion? Thank you, Rob. Okay. All right, so Samantha.
Sure. So for the Narberth Ave Bridge project, one of the things we're going to have to do is have a third-party construction inspector for the project. That's just part of the rule when you're using federal and state funds for a project. So as part of that, PennDOT has the standard resolution template for Borough Council to approve that dictates the process we would go about selecting the construction inspector by. I think it's pretty straightforward. I don't think it's much different than how we would have done it anyhow. Really, the only open question I would have, and I'm sure, and if council members have questions, of course, happy to talk about that. The only question I really have for council, there's a section in the resolution that calls for the borough to have an evaluation body for the companies that we received to do this construction inspection. My thought process would be that the infrastructure committee would serve as that review body, but I just wanted to make sure that council was comfortable with that. But otherwise, I think this is a pretty kind of pro forma. Well, I mean, if we were to, like, this basically, then we can't really make it changes to it, to be quite honest with you all. It's kind of a form that PennDOT is saying we kind of have to approve, but I'm happy to answer any questions about it.
Well, let me ask the chair of the construction committee if she has thoughts on this. So, Michelle, do you have any objection to?
No, that sounds fine. Whatever works best for you.
Great. Is there any other discussion of this resolution? All right. Do we need any other? Yeah, why not? Any other topics needed for us? Okay. All those in favor of the resolution? Okay. It's unanimous. Thank you. Yeah. Michelle and Rob. We came back to it the second time. All right, so next is 9C, which is also an infrastructure.
I move that we consider proposal by Venturi Scott Brown Architects for Narberth Avenue Bridge Art.
So a second. Okay, second from Bob. All right.
Which can be found on page 108 of the packet if you are so inclined, because it's a long packet. So if anybody wants to look at it and has not yet.
Yeah, I took a look at, do you want to summarize for us, Samantha?
Sure. Thank you, Council President. So as Borough Council had discussed after the artist presentations for the bridge art, I reached out to our architect for the project, VSBA, for a proposal to handle the bridge art for us. That proposal's enclosed. I reviewed it with the engineer for the borough responsible for the bridge project. To her, these costs and everything seemed appropriate to her. These costs are far less than the numbers that the various artists were asking for, to do the bridge art and all that. And a lot of these costs from VSBA we would have had anyway, even if we had selected an artist to go with it. So I would recommend that council approve this proposal, and then VSBA will submit, let's see here, looking at the scope of work. They would prepare, how many different concepts? They would prepare 3 concepts for council to look at and choose from. And again, I think because we're working with VSBA, who is the architect, I think it's just going to be a much smoother implementation process as well, and will allow us to move forward with maximum speed on getting that part of the bridge done.
Yeah, I have a quick question as well. Is this, so they say that it is our understanding that they will be bid, fabricated, and installed as part of the general contract for the bridge. Does that mean that it will be part of the 90% funding by the, okay, so 90% of this would be funded by the state and Amtrak? No. Why can't I?
You're muted.
So, it would be 85%. I'm sorry, no, it'd be 95%. 80% of the funding is from Amtrak, and 15% of the funding is from PennDOT. So yes, the actual cost of this proposal and the cost to actually do the bridge art would be paid for by the grant funding because of the way we're doing it now.
Okay, so Bob.
The question, and then I have a statement. The question is, like, are these 3 design concepts, these are being generated by VSBA. They are not outsourcing these to artists. Okay, good. Then with that assumption, I'm going to say that I really like this proposal a lot because this is basically the architect who was selected by a very significant process years and years and years ago. This architectural firm was selected by the Borough Council. At that time, they had a special committee and there was some public involvement. And this architectural firm was selected. And I think this gives that architectural firm the opportunity to execute fully the full design of the bridge and the complete design of the bridge. And I like it for the very reason that you just pointed to, that it means that it will be publicly funded appropriately, and like the borough doesn't have to go into its own pockets to do. Also, I like the certainty of this, that this provides, as opposed to like, if we were to choose an artist at this point, even though they all had really beautiful designs, they were all really competent and could deliver, there's a lot of process that would have to go into kind of like narrowing that down, and questions about who would be involved in that process and who would, how would we kind of get to the right solution that the community would be happy with. And I think there was enough opposition in the community to the notion that we would spend extra money at this time on art on its own anyway for the bridge. So I just think this is a really nice solution, especially if this is a very skillful architectural design firm.
All right, Ira?
So, I love the idea that it's going to be, funded, at 85 or 90%. I would like to see some notion of what it's going to cost, some constraints, some parameters, so we don't just turn the architect loose on something and they come up with a design that's going to cost $200,000 to build. So I don't know if that could be included in the proposal.
Okay, Samantha?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And part of the conversation I had with VSBA, we did talk a little bit in terms of what council might be looking for in terms of what the design should look like. And I, told them based on the feedback from the art that was reviewed, that council would probably prefer. I didn't want to like handcuff them too much or anything, but I kind of suggested them that cost will certainly be a factor in the decision.
So you don't like gold leaf?
Probably the best way to describe it is they should give us a range of options so that we can see, we don't want everything to be gold leaf, as you say.
Okay, and Cindy or Michelle, do you have any comments here? No? Okay. Michelle? All right. Anybody else? Okay. Thanks. I think this does seem to fit better with I like the idea of the big art, but I think council definitely was looking for something more integrated and that would. The other advantage here is it's not going to slow down the process, right? We're going to approve this, and this is just going to make sure that the bridge continues to roll along. So I think that's an important community goal, is to make sure that the bridge replacement is not delayed by anything we do at this point. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to accept Venturi Scott Brown's their proposal for the bridge art, to allow them to present us with a further proposal for the bridge art. All those in favor of this proposal? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. All right, 9D, coming from Parking Ad Hoc.
I move, thank you. I move that council consider approving the updated job description for parking controller. Sorry, second.
Okay, second.
Sorry, thank you. The committee reviewed it and asked that it have a little bit more of an emphasis on the public-facing aspect of this role. And so, we're hoping that we can find somebody who fits both the needs of the actual nuts and bolts of what needs to be done, but then the public facing aspect as well, as an ambassador to the borough.
And I just want to give a lot of thanks to Chief Gallagher for his work in incorporating the feedback from the parking committee into this job description. Just so council knows, Chief Gallagher is the one who put this together for you all tonight, and I think this is excellent, and I think it really fits in with what our parking study recommended that we try and do with this position. So my thanks to Chief Gallagher, and my thanks to the parking committee for their feedback on it as well.
Thanks, Samantha. I should have thought to say that, and I didn't. Thank you.
Is there any discussion in council? Seeing none, let's vote. All those in favor of an updated job description for the parking controller? All right, it's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. All right, let's move on to the committee reports. We'll start with infrastructure. Michelle.
Sure. Hi. I'll try to keep this relatively brief. We discussed briefly, Manager Bryant was not there. And so, but she did provide us with comprehensive memo, which formed the basis of some of our discussion. There may be some additions that have come up since then, and I would welcome or ask her to chime in if I'm missing something that has developed since her memo. But we talked about the Hanson Court lights. You might recall that there were some crumbling pillars at Hanson Court that were brought to our attention by a resident a couple of years ago. Manager Bryant's been moving forward with coordinating with the owners of the properties that are adjacent to the pillars. They are supportive and grateful for the borough's willingness to take them down and to replace them with street lights that match the rest of the lights on the street. I think at this point, what's happening is a petition's being circulated to the residents to ensure that we have wide enough support on the street. But unless something new has happened, that seems to be moving forward smoothly, which is great. It doesn't look like Samantha has anything to add. So we then talked about the Haverford Avenue bike pilot. The cycling club had submitted a variety of comments, which we addressed at the meeting. I won't go into all of them. I think of note, Public Works Director has identified several problems with using hay bales as a temporary form of sort of blocking off the bike lane, and has suggested that if we do future bike pilots, we look for a better semi-permanent solution. And in addition, there were some confusing do not enter signs that you may have noticed that Carol Marie Scanlon, who's still in this meeting, had pointed out to us, and we addressed at infrastructure. The borough engineer took note of it, and you might observe he found a solution. The signs have been changed, so they're much clearer that they don't apply to cars. So I don't think we have cars stopping and trying to back up anymore. They clearly apply to bikes. So that's moving forward. I think that goes until the spring. If anybody does receive comments or feedback, or have anybody who's expressed concerns or confusion about the bike lane, I would encourage you to even just have them send their feedback to the infrastructure committee, and we'll probably keep addressing this pilot and any considerations that it's raised as it moves forward into the spring. So then we spent most of the meeting talking about the updated sidewalk maintenance regulations ordinance. And I would like to actually basically, there were a lot of detailed notes and comments from our solicitor where he had asked the committee for some feedback in developing this ordinance. Just so you know, when it comes to us, it's really a full amendment of our streets and sidewalks. Chapter 446 of our code will provide updated and clearer standards for snow and ice removal, encroachments and obstructions, defective sidewalks and curbs, and for outdoor dining downtown. Of particular note, the amendments will clarify and create some measurable standards for sidewalk maintenance that will facilitate the borough staff in establishing an ongoing sidewalk maintenance program. So I think that will be great. I'm not sure when we can expect to see that ordinance coming before us. I don't know, Manager, if you know.
Speaking with the borough solicitor, I think he expects for the next infrastructure meeting to have an updated document for review.
Okay, great, thanks. Does anybody have any questions about that, or, so we'll just see that when he has a document for us to review. I think something that might be interesting to have a little discussion about, the one thing was when we talked about our outdoor dining decorative barricades and raised pedestrian crosswalks. We reviewed as a committee, Manager Bryant's memo regarding improvements to the downtown area, in service of our comprehensive plan, and specifically whether we could perhaps improve our, what we've allowed for outdoor dining areas to use some kind of decorative barrier. And there were two general sort of categories of barriers that were presented in the memo. One was sort of a standard steel barricade that was sort of covered with a decorative shield sheath cloth. And another was a form of barricade that was sort of inherently decorative in its design. And there were some examples that Swarthmore Borough has used. They're sort of wooden, built-in looking sort of platforms with seating. And so the first question was, what did you prefer as a committee? It was overwhelmingly felt that the second, the more inherently decorative barricades were much nicer if we can do them. So the other question was then, well, if we were to do this, is this something that the borough should develop and pay for, or should we be looking to work with community partners and local businesses to provide them, or to partner with us in providing them? So basically, we didn't really come to a decision on that. We had some discussion. Our public works director noted that he thought there could be a use for some of these beyond outdoor dining, sort of arguing that perhaps the borough should be the owner. But by the same token, we have actually had some community partners. I think Refugia, Rob had mentioned that Refugia had offered to provide some planters earlier, and we didn't take them up on that. So it might, be the case that our downtown businesses and, would actually be willing and able to provide a solution, sort of like what Swarthmore has done. I think where we left it was basically like, maybe what we should do is not only reach out to the Narberth Business Association, but also look and see how Swarthmore has solved this problem. If their business association has figured out a way to do this and work with their management and their administration, maybe we don't need to reinvent the wheel. So I would actually ask Manager Bryant, if you've had a chance to speak with anybody at Swarthmore. Michelle Carroll had thought that you may have already spoken with the Swarthmore manager about this, but if you've had any guidance for us on how you think we might proceed based on what you know about what Swarthmore has done, is this something that the borough should start talking about taking on and doing, or should we be looking to the business association to sort of shoulder this?
Sure. So in the interest of the time and agenda for tonight, all I will say is, yes, I did have lunch with the manager at Swarthmore Borough, actually over in Swarthmore Borough, and walked around the downtown and talked about some of the things that they've done and have going on. So I am happy at the next infrastructure meeting to put together some thoughts based on that conversation on how we could proceed here in Narberth.
Okay, great. Does anybody at council now have any thoughts about whether this is something that you would like to see the borough take a responsibility for, whether you think this is more of a looking for community partners to do it, or just spend some more time looking into it and provide more information? Cindy?
So when we, thank you for taking us on, Michelle. This has been something I really have been hoping that we advance quickly, particularly now given Omicron. But so when we started with the outdoor dining, we actually worked with the NBA to consider matching mini grants where the NBA kind of would cost share up to, I believe it was $2,000 for businesses that were businesses, not even just restaurants, businesses that were investing in COVID-safe outdoor arrangements and infrastructure. So I would be comfortable with some sort of maybe three-pronged, that the business, the NBA, and the borough somehow cost share, because I do think this is more than, at this point, just about health and safety, because it's about our physical and social infrastructure. And we're saying that we're moving to a long-term investment. I think the pictures that we just saw going from, streets pre and post is kind of the goal I'm thinking of. And considering that kind of after picture with pedestrian-friendly outdoor streetscapes feels appropriate for the borough to help cost share some of that.
Thanks. Yeah, I like that suggestion of finding some kind of cost sharing program, like a mini grant program.
I did have a comment on that, and I think, okay, go ahead, Ira.
Okay, so, I mean, this is the kind of project that NIDA could easily contribute matching funds towards. They did get some money last year in a new loan, so they have money, and so there's a new membership in place now. I think it would be a great project for them to look at.
It sounds like this is going to be further discussed in infrastructure later this month.
Okay, great suggestion. So the last thing that we really talked about was the raised pedestrian crosswalks. And we didn't really talk in great detail, so I will just mention that is something that we're looking at. And right now we're just going to have Eric Johnson and Jeff Eldon look into getting some cost estimates for the portable rubber raised crosswalks that we may be able to use, perhaps on Haverford Avenue or as a flexible portable sort of traffic calming measure throughout the borough, but that's not something we're moving forward to do now. We're just going to get some cost estimates. We also discussed, I think I cannot leave this out, some current borough projects. I don't think we need to talk too much about the grants or the bridge we've discussed, but the skate park, which of course is not installed yet. We did have an update from Public Works Director Alden on the state park pilot, which I think is likely to start more when we get into the spring. The equipment is here. It's, some of it I think is in sort of rough shape. Public Works is working hard to refurbish it. Jeff Eldon has also met with some local skate park experts to sort of think about the size and the assembly of the pieces and to have them create an installation map for us for where we can place the pieces. So he's looking for their expertise. We had some discussion about possible measures that he is researching the cost of to provide some sort of sound buffering and insulation with the equipment that could include something like closed cell foam spray or plywood. Again, this is going to develop over the next couple of months, but, the infrastructure committee is going to be talking about and recommending the hours of operation. And we'll have a discussion about the rules and regulations that we need to implement for the skate park, both for, safety and sound reasons and also for, insurance and just ensuring that we operate the park correctly. So that's something we're going to be updating you about in the next couple of months and asking for your thoughts and feedback and as well. And I think that just about covers infrastructure.
Andrea?
Mayor.
If I just may ask, I'm not sure if this is the right committee or parking is the right committee. I had a question as to the reinstalling of the parking meters at the 114 Forest building site. I've seen that they've redone all the sidewalks, and I don't see that they left spaces for the meters. So is there any talk? Because I don't want that to be lost in the shuffle.
That we have not talked about that. I have not thought about it. Nobody's pointed that out. That's a great observation. I think that probably what we need to do is ask manager to sort of maybe check in with the construction team and see what's happening with that.
Sorry, take a quick note, but go ahead.
Yeah, we'll definitely review the land development plan for 114 Forest. And I know, Michelle Carroll, our assistant to the manager, participates weekly in calls about the construction status. So, I have a note to compare notes with Michelle tomorrow, and Mayor will get you an answer on that.
Thank you very much. I didn't want it to become like unmetered parking and then the businesses lose the parking. That would be bad.
All right. I think if it becomes relevant, then we'll go to, that's the right place, or parking.
Because this is not, I just want to make this comment then.
Okay, why don't you discuss it with Rob, and you can figure out where it's gonna belong.
I just want to make a comment for everyone, just that if this becomes a question, because we've got some development happening. So if the question of the reinstallation of parking meters, the hardware itself becomes a question, I think it's a good question to think about as a council, given that we probably will have some kind of like meterless parking technology in the future. And, do we really want to continue? Do we want to clutter up the sidewalk
with parking meters, if we could say have 15 minutes free and then you use an app or something if you want to park there for longer, and then you don't have to have as much stuff in the sidewalk. So it's just, I think it's a question, I think it's more than a question of like, are you just going to put the parking meters back? I think we should be asking, do we want to put those parking meters back? You know, or there's alternate ways to regulate the parking that's less cluttering of the streetscape.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. I think that's infrastructure. Let's move on to finance and administration.
Sure, it's kind of a bridge comment. Michelle, if it's helpful, I was actually going to ask FNA at our next meeting to explore how we can leverage partnerships with NIDA. So Ira, your suggestion to revisit NIDA and how to help us perhaps fund and invest in our downtown is a really good one. And I'll ask that maybe we talk about it at our next meeting. Michelle, if that's helpful for infrastructure to play out some scenarios on what cost and support would do, we can fast track that, whatever your schedule is, for when you're looking for funds for this outdoor dining.
Sure, yeah, thank you.
The next, I'll just be really quick because I did go over everything at our last meeting. Unless, Samantha, you have any updates, timely updates on Borough communications that we should know, or the office reception area, I really have gone over everything at FNA at our last meeting. Okay, then I'll update you. We meet in 2 weeks, and we'll have more for you after that.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Moving on to public health and safety. Do you need a microphone?
Okay. Can you hear me this way?
I lost all sound.
Me
Same
too.
here. Same here.
Here, come on over here, Rob.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so we do have 2 traffic counters now working, and we have 8 traffic concerns that have come to the committee. So the process is now working. We're collecting data, and that data is going to start coming to our committee in February so that we can make data-driven decisions. So excited about that. We also have a number of EAC items that we'll get to in more detail next month, including the green building code, which the committee is reviewing to see if we would recommend for council to consider. SoulSmart is also part of that EAC work that we want to do. And then we have the inspection program that's coming. Samantha, is that right? And do we need to do anything more? We do? Okay, so in February, we'll keep working on that. And then the other thing is we have been hearing updates from our manager about the LED streetlights, and most of those concerns have been addressed. So I want to thank the manager. It was a lot of work to follow up on all of those concerns. And the streetlights have
tomorrow, but you're awake.
The streetlights have been dimmed, so I think people's concerns have been addressed. We are also just so that the other chairs are aware. We also had a bit of a discussion, Michelle, about raised pedestrian crosswalks as a public safety issue. Safety for pedestrians. So that's something I'd like to coordinate with you, with your committee around, because we haven't, because we're of course receiving all of these traffic concerns.
It helps that you're on both committees too, so that should make the coordination easy.
Yeah, right.
I think we should do that, definitely.
Yeah. And the other coordination is with Barbara's committee. We want to think about EV charging stations and also just kind of easing the way for residents to install EV chargers especially if they don't have a driveway. So that's something we want to coordinate with parking as well. So I think that's most of it for now. Thank you, Fred.
All right. Parking.
All right, thanks. So, with the approval of the job description for the parking controller officer, that, that hiring process, recruitment process will get started, and the hope is to be able to ask council to approve someone to hire within a month or so, to get that done pretty quickly. We're working through getting a better understanding of the technology option that could be out there for parking meter technology that would allow folks to use an app to pay for parking, and we hope that we can have something for you to consider at the business meeting. We're working on the requirements or rules around parking in the municipal lots, and we have to have a proposal for that in February. And then if all goes as we are mapping it out, we'll have something around residential parking in March for you to consider. So our next meeting is the 25th at 9 a.m., January 25th at 9 a.m. And then in February, we start meeting the second and fourth Tuesdays at 9 a.m. So more to come.
Okay. Thank you, Barbara. That's it for committee reports. Are there any announcements for the good of council? All right. See you, Mayor.
I just want to congratulate Fred on running his first meeting.
Thank you. It's a little more challenging than I had envisioned.
You did great.
Didn't show.
Thank
Good
you.
thing there were no technical issues.
You're very kind. All right. I will take a motion to adjourn. All right. A second?
Second.
All those in favor of adjournment? All right. Thank you, everyone. And there is no executive session tonight. So thanks, everyone.
Wonderful.